While you are watching this, the biology of your belief system is undergoing a forced reconfiguration. The priority structure that kept your reality stable is entering a deliberate collapse. Maybe you have felt it already. Things that mattered deeply yesterday suddenly seem flat today, as if an internal software update happened without your consent. This is not a mistake in your path. It is a shift in directive within your electromagnetic field, a change in what your system responds to and what it no longer tolerates. And here is the real danger. If you ignore this new order, if you try to operate from the old settings, the system begins to short-circuit. The tension you feel is not random. It is the signal of an update that has already begun. There is a kind of exhaustion that sleep does not touch. You wake up after 8 hours and your body feels heavier than when you went to bed. Coffee sharpens your mind for a moment, but underneath there is a dull fatigue, as if something inside you has been running all night. This is not simple tiredness. It feels deeper, almost cellular. What you are experiencing is a breakdown in your inner balance. For years, your system was organized around one main goal: survival. Stay safe, stay accepted, stay predictable. Your thoughts, habits, even your relationships were arranged around maintaining stability. Like a thermostat set to a familiar temperature, your nervous system knew how to keep everything within a narrow range. But something shifted. Without asking your permission, your internal priorities moved from survival to expansion, and expansion consumes energy. When a system that was designed to conserve suddenly begins to upgrade, it pulls power from every corner. The fatigue you feel is the friction between the old setting and the new directive. Think of it like trying to run advanced software on hardware that has been optimized for something simpler. The battery drains faster. The processor overheats. You don't see the code, but you feel the strain. You may notice it in small ways. Tasks that once felt meaningful now seem strangely empty. Conversations that used to energize you feel forced. At the same time, there is a quiet restlessness. Something in you wants more, but you cannot name what more means. That tension is not a flaw, it is a recalibration. Your body is not just flesh and bone, it is a communication network, hormones, electrical impulses, subtle chemical signals, all of it working together to maintain what scientists call homeostasis, a dynamic balance. When the priority changes, that balance must temporarily destabilize so a new one can form. And destabilization is uncomfortable. You might interpret it as anxiety, or irritability, or random waves of sadness that do not match your current life. But what if these sensations are not signs that something is wrong? What if they are signs that your system is reallocating resources? Pause for a moment. Close your eyes if you can. Notice where the fatigue lives. Is it behind your eyes, in your chest, in your shoulders? Don't try to fix it. Just locate it. Give it 10 quiet breaths of attention. Often when you observe it directly, you realize it is not pure weakness. It is pressure of change. Now open your eyes. Expansion feels heavy before it feels light. A seed breaks open in darkness before it becomes a plant. That breaking is not gentle. Your biology behaves the same way. When your inner directive shifts, your nervous system must learn new patterns. It must release old reactions. It must let go of identities that kept you safe but small. This is why sleep cannot fix it. Sleep restores the body to its previous setting. But if the setting itself is changing, rest alone cannot solve the friction. You are not meant to return to the old baseline. You are being pushed to establish a new one. Here is the delicate part. Many people misinterpret this phase. They think they are burned out, or broken, or regressing. They try to force themselves back into the previous rhythm. They double down on old habits. They seek distractions to numb the discomfort. But when a system has shifted its priority, pretending it has not only increases the strain. Your exhaustion is a message. It says, the old way of operating is no longer efficient. And there is something else hidden in this breakdown. When survival was the priority, your body rewarded predictability. Familiar routines felt safe. Now, as expansion becomes central, your system begins to crave alignment rather than safety. It becomes more sensitive to what drains you and more responsive to what feels true. This sensitivity can feel overwhelming at first, like your emotional skin has become thinner. You may even find that your tolerance for pretending has dropped. Situations you used to endure now feel unbearable. That is not weakness, it is recalibration of thresholds. But here is where the real tension begins. When people feel this internal instability, most of them choose one of two reactions. They either panic and try to control everything, or they decide to wait. They tell themselves this is just a phase, it will pass. They assume that if they do nothing, the system will quietly reset to the old normal. What they do not realize is that once a priority shifts, it does not revert so easily. The body interprets prolonged inertia during transformation as stagnation, and stagnation sends a different kind of signal through your biology, one that can deepen the fatigue instead of resolving it. So the question is not whether your system changed. It did. The question is what you will do in response to the instability. And this is where most people make a subtle but critical mistake that costs them far more energy than the shift itself. When the internal shift begins, most people respond with what sounds like wisdom. They say, "I'll just give it time." They tell themselves that patience is maturity, that waiting is strength. On the surface, that seems reasonable. After all, not every discomfort requires action. But in this specific phase, passive waiting becomes a silent form of resistance. Your system has already changed its priorities. It is no longer organized around maintaining the familiar. It is reorganizing around growth. And growth does not interpret stillness the way you think it does. There is a difference between grounded stillness and frozen inertia. Grounded stillness is alert. It listens. It adjusts. Frozen inertia, however, is avoidance dressed as patience. It says, "Let's not move until this feels safe again." The problem is that safety is no longer the primary objective of your internal system. Expansion is. When you patiently wait for the discomfort to disappear, your body reads that signal. Biologically, inaction during a period of required adaptation can resemble shutdown. Your nervous system begins to conserve energy even more. Motivation drops. Clarity fades. The fatigue you felt before becomes heavier, not lighter. This is why some people report that after weeks of waiting for clarity, they feel even more disconnected. It is not because they failed. It is because the system interpreted their passivity as a refusal to engage with the update. Imagine your internal structure, like a city undergoing renovation. Roads are being redirected, old buildings are being demolished, new foundations are being poured. If the workers stop halfway through because the noise is uncomfortable, the city does not return to its previous state. It becomes chaotic. Half-finished structures create more confusion than transformation. The same happens inside you. You may say, "I'm just waiting for the right moment." But notice what that really means. Often it means waiting for certainty, waiting for proof, waiting for someone else to validate what you are feeling. Yet this phase was never designed to provide certainty first. It was designed to require participation. There is a subtle fear underneath passive waiting. It whispers, "If I move too soon, I might make a mistake." So you choose to do nothing. But doing nothing is also a decision, and your biology registers it. Let's examine this honestly. Are you truly resting and observing? Or are you postponing a small, uncomfortable action because it threatens your old identity? This is not a question to judge yourself. It is a question to measure alignment. Right now, think of one area in your life where you feel that inner tension. Perhaps a conversation you know you need to have, a boundary you need to clarify, a creative impulse you keep postponing. Notice the physical response in your body as you think about it. Does your chest tighten? Does your stomach contract? Stay with that sensation for a few breaths. Do not analyze it, just feel it. Now ask yourself gently, if I continue waiting, what actually changes? Most of the time, the honest answer is nothing. The external world remains the same. The internal pressure slowly increases. Waiting becomes a loop. Here is the deeper issue. During this recalibration phase, your system is highly sensitive to signals of engagement. Even small actions communicate cooperation. When you take one aligned step, however minor, your nervous system begins to reorganize around momentum rather than stagnation. Energy starts to redistribute differently, but when you consistently delay, The body interprets that as a threat to the new directive. It doubles down on discomfort to get your attention. This is why inertia can start to feel almost suffocating. It is not punishment, it is amplification. There is another layer most people overlook. Waiting often masks the hope that someone else will make the decision for you, that circumstances will shift first, that clarity will arrive like a clear voice from the sky. Yet this stage does not respond to external confirmation. It responds to internal commitment. And here is the uncomfortable truth. The longer you wait, the more the gap widens between who you were and who you are becoming. You begin to feel suspended between identities, not fully anchored in the old, not yet embodied in the new. That suspended space can feel disorienting, even empty. If you stay there too long without conscious engagement, that emptiness can start to pull at you. It can drain motivation, distort perception, and create the illusion that you are lost. But you are not lost. You are between versions. And what exists in that in-between space is not neutral. It is charged. It is fertile. It is unstable in a way that demands awareness. The moment you stop waiting passively and start participating intentionally, the entire field responds differently. Because this vacuum between who you were and who you are becoming is not empty at all. It is filled with something powerful. And if you do not understand what inhabits it, you risk letting it shape you unconsciously instead of stepping into it deliberately. There is a strange space you enter when the old version of you no longer fits, but the new one has not fully formed. It can feel like walking through your own life as a visitor. The routines are familiar, the faces are the same, but something inside you does not respond the way it used to. You are present, yet not anchored. This is the vacuum between identities. You are no longer who you were. The priorities that once guided your decisions have shifted. What once felt urgent now feels optional. What once felt impossible now feels quietly necessary. And yet, you cannot clearly define who you are becoming. There is no finished blueprint, no clear label to adopt. That undefined space can feel unsettling. The human mind prefers clarity. It likes categories. It likes knowing which story it belongs to. When you lose the old narrative before the new one stabilizes, there is a gap. And the mind often interprets that gap as danger. But this space is not empty in the way you think. It is pure potential, a field of probability where multiple versions of you are possible. The problem is that most people enter this field unconsciously. They feel the disorientation and rush to fill it. They grab the nearest identity that offers comfort, even if it is outdated. Or they allow external voices to define who they should become next. The vacuum does not tolerate unconscious occupation. If you do not choose deliberately, something else will choose for you. Old habits, old fears, inherited beliefs. They are quick to step in and claim the space. Pause for a moment and notice where you feel this in your own life. Is there an area where you no longer resonate with your previous role? Maybe in your career, where the ambition that once drove you feels hollow. Maybe in relationships, where your tolerance for certain dynamics has decreased. Maybe in your inner dialogue, where the voice that used to criticize now sounds foreign. As you think about it, notice the sensation in your body. Does it feel like emptiness in the chest, a floating sensation in the stomach, a subtle restlessness in your limbs? Stay with that for a few breaths. Do not try to define it. Just observe. This observation is crucial because what inhabits the vacuum feeds on inattention. When you are unaware, doubt grows louder. You may begin questioning your decisions, your stability, even your sanity. Why can't I just be who I was? Why does everything feel uncertain? These thoughts are not proof that you are regressing. They are echoes of an identity dissolving. There is also a temptation to rush transformation, to declare a new identity before it has matured, to announce a new direction to convince yourself it is real, but premature certainty can be another form of escape. The vacuum requires tolerance. It asks you to stand in ambiguity without collapsing into fear. This is where many people misinterpret the silence. They assume that because they cannot clearly see the next version of themselves, nothing is happening. In reality, the system is reorganizing at a deeper level. Values are being reordered. Emotional thresholds are being recalibrated. The internal compass is adjusting. However, there is something few people recognize about this in-between state. It amplifies whatever signal is strongest inside you. If fear dominates, the vacuum magnifies it. If curiosity is present, it expands that instead. The space itself is neutral. Your dominant emotional frequency determines what grows. That is why awareness matters so much here. Instead of asking, "Who am I now?" try asking, "What feels more true today than it did a year ago?" The answer may be subtle. Perhaps you value honesty more than approval. Perhaps you crave depth over distraction. These small shifts are not random. They are clues. The vacuum is not asking you to invent a new personality. It is asking you to align with what has quietly been evolving within you. Yet alignment does not begin with thought. You cannot think your way into your next identity. You feel your way into it. And this is where the internal hierarchy changes again. For years you may have trusted logic above all. You analyzed, you calculated, you tried to outthink uncertainty. But in this transitional space, the mind becomes unreliable. It clings to the past because the past is documented. The future is not. Something else must take the lead. There is a deeper signal in your body that already knows which direction carries coherence and which carries contraction. You have felt it before, that subtle expansion in the chest when something resonates, or that tightness when something is misaligned. This signal is not dramatic, it is precise. As the vacuum stabilizes, the system begins to prioritize this emotional pulse over intellectual reasoning. The command center shifts from mental narratives to embodied truth. And if you continue trying to solve this transition only with analysis, you will feel increasingly disconnected. Because the new priority does not respond primarily to what you think, it responds to what you feel at a magnetic level. And understanding that shift changes everything about how you navigate what comes next. For most of your life, you were trained to believe that your brain is the command center of your reality. Think better, plan better, calculate better, and your life will improve. Logic was placed on a throne. Emotions were treated as unreliable, even dangerous. So you learned to override what you felt in order to appear rational and in control. But something subtle has shifted. The new internal priority is no longer organized around mental strategy. It is organized around coherence. And coherence begins in the heart. This is not poetry, it is physiology. The heart generates an electromagnetic field that extends beyond the physical body. That field changes depending on your emotional state. When you feel appreciation, calm, or genuine connection, the rhythm of the heart becomes smooth and ordered. When you feel fear, resentment, or inner conflict, that rhythm becomes erratic. Your entire nervous system adjusts according to that pattern. The brain responds to the heart signals more than most people realize. There is constant communication between them, and the heart sends powerful information upward. When your emotional state is chaotic, your thinking becomes fragmented. When your emotional state is coherent, your thinking sharpens naturally. The system inside you has recognized something important. You can no longer build the next phase of your life on mental force alone. You can repeat affirmations about abundance, success, or peace, but if your chest tightens with doubt while you say them, the signal is mixed. The body does not follow words, it follows resonance. Take a moment right now. Place your attention gently in the center of your chest, not your thoughts about it, your direct attention. Breathe slowly and imagine the air moving in and out through that area. Do this for a few breaths. Notice what happens. At first, your mind may try to comment. This is strange. Is this working? Let those thoughts pass. Stay with the sensation of breathing through the heart area. Often within a minute or two, something softens. The shoulders drop slightly. The jaw relaxes. The breath deepens without effort. That shift is not imagination. It is your nervous system moving toward coherence. Now think about something you genuinely appreciate. It could be a person, a memory, even a simple moment of beauty you once experienced. As you hold that memory lightly, notice how your chest feels. There is usually a subtle warmth or expansion. That expansion is a measurable change in your internal field. Here is why this matters. When the internal system changes its priority, it begins to filter decisions through this emotional coherence rather than pure logic. You might think something is a smart move on paper, but if your heart rhythm becomes tight and irregular, when you imagine taking that step, your body is signaling misalignment. For years, you may have ignored those signals. You told yourself that discomfort was weakness, that fear meant you should push harder. Sometimes pushing was necessary. But now the guidance system is more refined. It is not asking you to eliminate thought. It is asking you to synchronize thought with feeling. If you think, this opportunity is good for me, but your chest constricts, there is internal contradiction. The new priority does not reward contradiction. It amplifies coherence. This is also why emotional honesty becomes unavoidable. You cannot trick this system with positive language while suppressing resentment, grief, or anxiety. The heart's rhythm reflects what is actually present, not what you wish were true. That can feel confronting. It requires you to admit what you are truly feeling instead of what sounds evolved. There is a danger here, though. When you first begin to listen to the heart more than the mind, you may confuse emotional reactivity with intuitive guidance. Not every strong feeling is aligned. Fear can be loud. Old wounds can masquerade as truth. So the question becomes, how do you distinguish between chaotic emotion and coherent guidance? The difference is in the quality of the sensation. Chaotic emotion feels sharp, urgent, and contracting. Coherent guidance feels steady, even if it asks for courage. It has a quiet confidence to it. It does not scream. It hums. As you practice breathing into the heart and noticing these distinctions, something subtle begins to reorganize. Decisions that once required endless analysis become clearer. You start trusting the calm expansion more than the anxious calculation. But this initial alignment is only calibration. It is like tuning an instrument before a performance. You can create coherence in a quiet room by yourself. The real test appears when the external world pulls at you, when someone challenges your change, when old environments trigger old reactions, when pressure rises and your heart rhythm threatens to fall back into chaos. That is where this new priority either stabilizes or collapses. And the external reactions you begin to face may be stronger than you expect. There is a simple practice that begins to stabilize this internal shift, but its simplicity can be deceiving. When the priority moves from mental control to emotional coherence, the first step is not to change your life. It is to regulate your signal. Most people try to fix their circumstances while their internal field is still chaotic. They attempt new plans, new conversations, new goals, but they carry the same irregular rhythm inside their chest. The result is mixed outcomes. Effort without alignment drains energy even faster. Coherence begins with rhythm. Right now, without forcing anything, bring your attention back to the center of your chest. Inhale slowly to a count that feels natural. Exhale just as slowly. Keep the breath smooth, not dramatic. Imagine that the air is moving directly through your heart space, even if you know anatomically it is not. What matters is the focus. Stay with this for about 3 minutes. You may notice the mind wandering. That is normal. Each time it does, gently return to the sensation of breathing through the chest. After a short while, something subtle shifts. The breath becomes deeper without effort. The body softens. The background noise in your thoughts decreases slightly. Now, while maintaining that breathing rhythm, recall a memory that evokes genuine appreciation. Not something abstract like success, but something specific and real. A conversation that warmed you. A quiet morning with sunlight across the floor. A moment when you felt understood. Let that memory fill your chest. Notice how your heartbeat feels. Notice the texture of your breath. There is often a sense of order, like waves moving evenly instead of crashing randomly. This is coherence. In this state, your nervous system operates differently. Stress hormones decrease. The brain receives clearer signals. Your perception sharpens. You become less reactive and more responsive. It is not mystical. It is measurable physiology. But its impact reaches beyond the body because your emotional field influences how you interpret reality. Here is where the code reveals itself. The system inside you responds not to intensity, but to consistency. A short burst of calm followed by hours of internal conflict will not stabilize the new priority. What begins to recalibrate your life is repeated moments of coherence, even if they last only a few minutes each. This means you do not need to meditate for hours. You need to return to alignment often, before a meeting, before a difficult conversation, before making a decision. You regulate your rhythm first, then you act. But there is a warning hidden in this simplicity. External environments will test your coherence immediately. You may leave a calm moment feeling centered, and then a message arrives that triggers irritation. Someone questions your change. An unexpected problem surfaces. Your old patterns will try to reclaim control. In that moment, your body reacts before your mind catches up. The heart rhythm becomes erratic again. The breath shortens. Thoughts accelerate. This is where most people lose the calibration. They assume coherence is fragile. They conclude that it didn't work. It worked. You just entered a stronger field. The goal is not to avoid disruption. It is to notice it faster. When you feel the contraction return, pause. Do not immediately defend, explain, or fix. Bring your attention back to your chest for a few breaths. Even 10 slow breaths can interrupt the spiral. There is power in that interruption. It signals to your system that you are choosing regulation over reaction. Each time you do this, the new priority strengthens. However, coherence also exposes misalignment in your outer world. As your internal rhythm becomes steadier, you may begin to see clearly where certain interactions consistently pull you into chaos. Conversations that leave you drained, environments that tighten your chest, dynamics that require you to suppress your authentic response. At first, you may try to maintain coherence within those spaces, and sometimes you can. But if the external pressure constantly disrupts your internal alignment, the system will register that friction. It will begin to question whether those connections support the new directive. This is where tension can escalate. When you start choosing coherence over automatic agreement, people around you may feel the shift. They may not understand it, but they will sense it. The rhythm of your responses changes. You pause more, you react less, you speak differently, and not everyone will welcome that. Because when one person stabilizes internally, the surrounding system must adjust. And not all systems adjust peacefully. When your internal priority changes, it does not happen in isolation. You are part of networks, family, friendships, work environments, long-standing dynamics that were built around who you used to be. The moment your rhythm shifts, those networks feel it. At first, the change is subtle. You pause before responding where you once reacted instantly. You say no where you used to say yes automatically. You no longer laugh at things that once felt normal. These are small adjustments, but they alter the emotional contract you had with others. Every relationship is built on an unspoken agreement. I will show up as this version of myself, and you will respond to me as that version. When you begin operating from coherence instead of habit, that agreement quietly dissolves. Some people will adapt. They will feel your steadiness and adjust their rhythm, but others may resist without even knowing why. They might say, "You've changed." They might accuse you of being distant, selfish, or different in a way that feels threatening to them. This is where the pressure intensifies. The old survival-based system would have prioritized harmony at any cost. It would have encouraged you to smooth things over, to shrink slightly, to return to familiar patterns so the discomfort would disappear. That strategy once kept you safe, but now the internal directive has shifted. Expansion does not respond well to self-betrayal. If you override your coherence to please others, your body feels it immediately. The chest tightens, the breath shortens. There is a subtle drop in energy afterward. You might leave an interaction feeling drained without fully understanding why. That depletion is not random. It is the cost of abandoning your new alignment. Pause and consider one relationship that feels strained lately. As you think about interacting with that person, notice your body. Is there openness or contraction? This is not about judging them. It is about observing your internal signal. Stay with that sensation for a few breaths. Imagine responding from your old pattern, agreeing, avoiding, minimizing your truth. Notice how your body reacts. Now imagine responding calmly but honestly, even if it creates temporary tension. Observe the difference in your chest and stomach. This contrast is information. The collapse people fear is rarely dramatic at first. It begins as friction, more misunderstandings, more subtle conflicts. You may feel pulled between maintaining connection and maintaining integrity. That tension can be exhausting because it touches a deep human need, belonging. Here is the difficult truth. Not every relationship was designed to accompany you into your next phase. Some were formed around shared wounds, shared limitations, shared comfort zones. When you begin healing or expanding, the glue that held the bond together weakens. This does not mean you must cut people off abruptly. It means you must stop negotiating against yourself. When you consistently choose coherence, relationships either recalibrate or reveal their fragility. And fragility can look like blame. Others may project their discomfort onto you. They may say you are overthinking, or becoming too sensitive, or acting superior. These reactions are often expressions of their own instability in the face of your change. The temptation will be to revert, to reassure them by shrinking, to prove that you are still the same. But each time you do that, your internal system registers it as a failed update. The signal becomes confused again. Expansion requires a different kind of courage, not aggression, not rebellion, but steadiness. The ability to remain calm while others react. The ability to tolerate temporary distance without collapsing into guilt. This phase can feel lonely. When old dynamics dissolve before new connections form, you may experience a gap, fewer invitations, less automatic understanding, a sense of standing slightly apart. But this space is not punishment. It is filtration. The relationships that remain or evolve will be built on a different frequency. Less dependency, more authenticity, more room to breathe. There is another layer beneath this relational shift. As external bonds recalibrate, your relationship with your own mind also begins to change. You start noticing how often your thoughts try to pull you back into old roles, how they rehearse arguments, replay conversations, anticipate rejection. And here is where a deeper revelation begins to surface. You were taught to believe that if you could just change your thoughts, everything else would follow. But now you are seeing that the mind often reinforces the very patterns you are trying to outgrow. The observer inside you, the one aware of these thoughts, is not the same as the thoughts themselves. And understanding who that observer truly is will challenge everything you assumed about control and identity. For most of your life you were told that you are your thoughts, that the voice in your head is the command center. So when something feels off, you try to correct the voice. You attempt to think more positively, to replace doubt with affirmation, to discipline your mind into better patterns. But what if the mind is not the true observer? Right now, as you read these words, there is a voice interpreting them. It agrees or disagrees. It compares what you're hearing to what you already believe. That voice feels personal, familiar. It uses the word I. But pause for a moment and notice something subtle. If you can hear that voice, then you are not the voice. There is an awareness behind it, quiet, steady, watching the thoughts move, watching emotions rise and fall. That awareness does not argue, it does not panic, it simply notices. Close your eyes for a few seconds and observe your next thought. Do not try to control it. Just wait. A thought will appear on its own, maybe about your day, maybe about this conversation. Notice how it arrives without effort. You did not manufacture it deliberately. It emerged. Now ask yourself, who noticed that thought? This is where perception begins to shift. The system inside you is not asking you to improve the voice. It is asking you to relocate your identity. For years, you identified with the mind because it felt active and powerful. But the mind is reactive. It is shaped by memory, by conditioning, by past experiences. It repeats patterns because repetition feels safe. The observer, however, is not reactive. It is spacious. It is the field in which thoughts appear. When you identify with the observer instead of the voice, something profound changes. You no longer need to fight every negative thought. You see it as a mental event, not a personal truth. This shift reduces internal friction immediately. Instead of wrestling with the mind, you step slightly behind it. There is a misconception that you must Stop thinking to access deeper intelligence. That is not accurate. Thoughts will continue. The difference is where you stand. If you are inside every thought, you are pulled in every direction. If you are aware of thoughts, you gain stability. The observer does not need to force change. Its clarity naturally alters the system. Think of it like sitting by a river. If you jump into the current, you are carried wherever it flows. If you sit on the bank and watch, you see the movement without being swept away. The water still moves, but you remain grounded. This is why trying to change your mind often fails. You're attempting to use one thought to defeat another thought. It becomes endless debate. The deeper shift is to notice both without attaching your identity to either. There is something even more unsettling here. If you are not your thoughts, then who have you been defending all these years? The image of yourself built from memory, the roles you played, the opinions you argued for. When the observer becomes primary, those constructs loosen. That can feel destabilizing at first. The ego resists losing control. It wants to stay central. It wants to narrate your life. But the new internal priority does not revolve around narrative. It revolves around alignment. When you rest as the observer, your emotional coherence becomes easier to maintain. You notice contraction in the chest without instantly explaining it away. You notice fear without becoming it. This creates space for a different kind of intelligence to operate. Some describe this intelligence as intuition. Others call it inner guidance. It does not shout. It feels like a quiet knowing beneath the noise. It emerges more clearly when the mind is not dominating every moment. But here is the critical point. Observing alone is not enough if you remain emotionally disconnected. The observer is not cold detachment. It is aware presence. It includes the body. It includes sensation. It includes feeling. As you deepen into this awareness, you may begin to notice old emotional patterns resurfacing. Memories you thought were resolved. Reactions that seem out of proportion. This is not regression. It is exposure. When you step out of identification with the mind, suppressed material has room to rise. The system begins cleaning deeper layers, and some of those layers are not just personal. They are inherited, learned, embedded in your cellular memory. If you do not understand what is surfacing, you might mistake it for failure. But what is actually happening is a release of stored information that has been influencing you silently for years. As you begin to rest more often as the observer, something unexpected can happen. Old emotions rise without warning. A memory you have not thought about in years surfaces with surprising intensity. A reaction feels larger than the present moment deserves. It can be confusing, even discouraging. You might wonder, why is this coming back now? What you are experiencing is not random. The system has shifted its priority, and part of that shift includes clearing stored patterns that were never fully processed. Your body remembers what your mind has tried to move past. Every significant emotional experience leaves a trace in your nervous system. When something overwhelming happened and you did not have the space, safety, or support to process it, your body adapted. Muscles tightened, breathing changed, hormones surged. And when the moment passed, some of that activation remained stored as a pattern. You learned to function around it. For years, that stored material stayed quiet because your system was focused on survival and stability. It did not have the capacity to reopen old files. But now that the priority has shifted toward expansion and coherence, those unresolved patterns become obstacles. They distort your emotional signal. This is the hidden danger. If you're not aware that old imprints are surfacing, you may interpret the returning emotions as evidence that you are failing. You may think you are becoming more anxious, more reactive, less stable. In reality, what is happening is exposure. The system is attempting to clean outdated code. Notice what happens when a strong emotion arises. Perhaps irritation flares up in a situation that does not seem severe, or a wave of sadness appears without a clear trigger. Instead of immediately analyzing it, pause and bring your attention to the body. Where do you feel it? In the throat, the chest, the stomach? Stay there for a few breaths. Let the sensation exist without labeling it as good or bad. Often, when you do this, the emotion shifts slightly. It may intensify for a moment, then soften, or it may reveal a deeper layer beneath it. This is the body releasing tension that was previously held. There is also a generational component to consider. You inherited not only physical traits from your family, but also patterns of response. The way fear was handled, the way anger was expressed or suppressed, the way love was given or withheld. These patterns were modeled to you long before you had the awareness to question them. Some of them live in your posture, in your breathing habits, in your automatic reactions. When the internal system upgrades, it no longer wants to run on inherited scripts that limit coherence. So those scripts rise into awareness, not to punish you, not to overwhelm you, but to be seen. The danger is not in the memory itself. The danger is in resisting it. If you push it away, numb it, or distract yourself every time it surfaces, the energy remains stored. It continues influencing your decisions from behind the scenes. You might find yourself sabotaging opportunities or withdrawing from closeness without understanding why. The stored pattern quietly shapes perception. There is a difference between reliving and releasing. Reliving means replaying the story in your mind, strengthening the emotional charge. Releasing means feeling the sensation in the body without reinforcing the narrative. Right now, think of a recent emotional reaction that surprised you. Instead of replaying what happened, focus only on the physical sensation it created. Stay with it gently. You may notice that beneath anger, there was hurt. Beneath fear, there was vulnerability. Beneath numbness, there was fatigue. This kind of awareness changes how the system processes memory. When you observe and feel without attaching identity to the story, the nervous system begins to recalibrate. The stored charge decreases gradually. You may feel lighter afterward, even if the external situation has not changed. But there is another layer to this clearing process. As old patterns dissolve, the space they occupied does not remain empty. Something else begins to function more clearly. Intuition sharpens. When cellular memory no longer distorts your perception, your internal guidance becomes more precise. The subtle signals from your body are easier to interpret. The quiet knowing you sensed before becomes less clouded by fear or inherited scripts. However, to trust that intuition, you must first distinguish it from the echo of old wounds. And that distinction becomes clearer only as the stored patterns lose their grip. When old emotional patterns begin to loosen, something subtle becomes easier to detect. It is not loud, it does not argue, it does not rush. It feels more like a quiet, internal direction that was always there, but often drowned out by noise. This is intuition, but not in the vague way people usually describe it. In the old system, intuition felt like a guess, a hunch you sometimes trusted and sometimes ignored. It competed with logic, fear, and external opinions. It was inconsistent because your internal signal was inconsistent. Old memories, stored tension, and mental overanalysis distorted it. As the internal priority shifts and coherence increases, intuition recalibrates. It becomes more precise. You may notice this in simple moments. You think about calling someone and they contact you. You consider taking a different route and later discover there was traffic on your usual path. You sense discomfort about a decision before any visible problem appears. These are not mystical events. They are signs that your system is processing information faster than your conscious mind can explain. Your body receives and integrates subtle cues constantly. Tone of voice, facial micro-expressions, environmental shifts, patterns from past experience. The intellect can only handle a fraction of this data at once. Intuition is the integrated output of that deeper processing. When your nervous system is chaotic, that output is distorted. Fear can masquerade as guidance. Old trauma can feel like instinct. But when coherence stabilizes and stored emotional charge decreases, the signal becomes cleaner. Think of it like adjusting a radio. For years there was static. You could hear fragments of music, but the interference was strong. As you fine-tune the frequency, the static fades. The music becomes clear. It was always broadcasting. You just could not hear it fully. Right now, bring to mind a recent situation where you felt a subtle inner nudge. Perhaps you hesitated before agreeing to something. Perhaps you felt drawn toward an opportunity without logical justification. Notice how that signal felt in your body. Was it sharp and urgent or calm and steady? True intuition has a specific texture. It is firm but not frantic. It does not try to convince you with long arguments. It presents a simple sense of knowing. The mind may question it afterward, but the initial signal is clean. There is an important distinction here. Anxiety is loud. It demands immediate action. It paints catastrophic outcomes. Intuition is quieter. It may suggest caution, but without panic. It may suggest movement, but without desperation. As you strengthen your ability to observe thoughts and regulate your emotional rhythm, you begin to differentiate these signals more clearly. This is the reconfiguration. You may also notice that intuition becomes less dramatic and more practical. It guides small decisions as much as large ones. When to speak, when to stay silent, when to rest, when to push gently forward. These micro-adjustments accumulate. Over time, they create a path that feels more aligned and less forced. There is something humbling about this stage. You realize how often you overrode your own guidance in the past. You sought validation from others. You collected opinions. You waited for proof. Now the internal system places more weight on your embodied knowing. This does not mean abandoning logic. It means integrating it. Logic becomes a tool to implement what intuition signals. The heart senses direction. The mind organizes execution. But there is still a final step. Having access to intuition is not the same as embodying it. You can feel the signal and still hesitate. You can know the aligned choice and still default to old patterns. The integration of this new software requires action that matches the signal. And that is where discomfort reappears. When intuition points toward a conversation you have avoided, a boundary you need to set, or a risk that stretches you, your body may tighten again. Not because the guidance is wrong, but because growth requires movement. The system inside you has changed its priorities. It now responds to coherence, to awareness, to aligned action. Intuition provides direction, but integration requires participation. Without embodiment, the signal remains potential. So the question is no longer whether you can access guidance. It is whether you are willing to live according to it, even when the old comfort zones pull at you. Integration is quieter than awakening. When the shift first happens, it feels dramatic. Your energy changes, relationships shake, old emotions surface, intuition sharpens. There is movement, friction, intensity. But integration is different. It is the steady decision to live according to what you now know. The system inside you has already updated its priorities. It responds to coherence more than force. It values alignment over approval. It amplifies intuition when you listen and friction when you ignore it. But none of this stabilizes unless your daily actions reflect the new design. This is where many people hesitate. They enjoy the insight. They appreciate the clarity. They feel the truth of it in their chest. But when it comes time to embody it, they slow down. Not because they are incapable, but because integration requires letting go of the last pieces of the old identity. Integration is not about becoming someone new. It is about behaving consistently with what has already shifted inside you. Think about the signals you have been receiving, the tightness when you agree to something that drains you, the expansion when you speak honestly, the subtle calm when you follow your intuition. These are not abstract experiences. They are measurable changes in your nervous system. Now ask yourself, how often do your actions match those signals? You may notice gaps, moments when you felt the contraction but said yes anyway, times when you sensed the right step but postponed it. Integration closes those gaps. It begins in small, almost invisible ways. You pause before responding instead of reacting. You choose one honest sentence instead of a rehearsed performance. You take 10 minutes to regulate your breath before making a decision. These are not dramatic acts, but they send a powerful message to your system. I am cooperating with the update. Consistency matters more than intensity. You do not need to transform your entire life overnight. In fact, sudden, drastic moves often come from emotional reactivity rather than coherence. Integration is patient but not passive. It is deliberate. There will still be discomfort. When you align your behavior with your new internal priority, old patterns do not disappear instantly. They test you. You may feel guilt when setting a boundary. You may feel fear when choosing a different direction. You may feel doubt when acting on intuition without external validation. That discomfort does not mean you are off track. It means you are stretching beyond previous limits. Stay with the body during these moments. Notice the tightness. Breathe into it. Remind yourself that discomfort is not danger. Often, after you act in alignment, a wave of relief follows. A subtle lightness, a sense of internal order. This is integration reinforcing itself. Another important aspect is simplicity. The old system relied on complexity, overthinking, over-explaining, over-analyzing. The new system favors clarity. You may find yourself speaking more directly, choosing fewer but more meaningful commitments. Releasing activities that once filled time but not purpose. This simplification can feel unfamiliar. You may worry that you are doing less, but often you are doing what matters more. There is also a deeper shift happening beneath behavior. Your identity begins to reorganize around presence instead of performance. You are less concerned with how you appear and more attentive to how you feel internally. Decisions become less about image and more about resonance. As this stabilizes, your external reality starts reflecting the new pattern, not through magic, but through alignment. When your actions, emotions, and awareness point in the same direction, your communication changes, your energy in conversations changes. The opportunities you notice change. You are no longer trying to force life to match a mental picture. You are participating with it from coherence. The integration of this new software is not a final destination. It is an ongoing practice. Each day presents small choices that either reinforce the update or revert to the old coding. The difference now is that you can feel the impact immediately. The system inside you has shifted because the phase of theory is over. Insight without embodiment creates tension. Awareness without action creates stagnation. But when you live what you have realized, even imperfectly, you stabilize the transformation. And once you begin to trust this new way of operating, something steady forms beneath you. Not certainty about the future, but confidence in your ability to respond to it from alignment rather than fear. The system inside you changed its priorities because you are no longer meant to live on autopilot. You felt the exhaustion. You faced the vacuum. You saw how waiting keeps you stuck. You learned to breathe into your heart, to observe your mind, to listen to intuition, and to act in alignment. This is not theory anymore, it is practice. And the real shift happens in the small choices you make after this moment. So here is your quiet contract. If you made it all the way here, write in the comments, "I accept the update." That tells me you didn't just watch, you felt it. And if this resonated with you, choose one of the videos on your screen now and keep going. If you want more depth like this, stay in this space with me.